Sunbelt Billy. Sunbelt Billy. I don't know what we're going to do with the Florida Gators and Sunbelt Billy. I made a video, I don't know, a few months ago, some point over the summer, I know it was during the off season, saying that there's a possibility Billy Napier is the new Butch Jones, former Tennessee Vols head coach, our good buddy Lyle. I caught a lot of heat and slack from that from Florida fans, and I'll admit that it is too early, even now, to classify someone as the next Lyle. But look, signs are pointing in a certain direction here when it comes to our boy Sunbelt Billy down in Gainesville with the Florida Gators. Y'all know I hate writing stuff down. I usually just do these types of videos and kind of shoot from the hip, opinions and kind of just thoughts based on what I've seen and heard. But while I was reading some stuff today, I was like, I've got to write some of this stuff down so I can make sure I mention it. Now, of course, Florida played South Florida this past Saturday, right? And really should have lost the game. Tried to lose the game. Ended up winning by 3 points, 31-28. South Florida had a chance to tie the game up at the very end. They messed the snap up. The hold was bad. South Florida misses the kick. Florida wins. Now, I'll be the first to admit that, 10 years from now, that's all anyone will remember is that Florida beat South Florida. But in the moment, these things can matter. And it's not a good look, I don't think, for what's going on down in Florida. Florida is 6 points away. I got to look at some of my notes here. Florida is 6 points away from being 0-3. 6 points away from being 0-3. Let's go back to the Utah game. Great drive by Anthony Richardson at the end of that game. I've been very hard on Anthony Richardson when he's deserved it, which has been the majority of the time. I've also been complimentary of Anthony Richardson when I think he deserves that. I have said, look, you watch Anthony Richardson warm up, the guy looks like a future Hall of Famer. He's got a rocket for an arm. He's huge. He's mobile. He's fast. He's what you look for physically in terms of that type of running back. I mean, running back. Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe he should be a running back. That's what you look for in a quarterback with his type of style. It just ain't happening on game days, though, when it comes to throwing the ball. And that's just a fact. Now, he did lead them down for that, what ended up being the game-winning score towards the end of the Florida game. But then Utah got the ball back, went right down the field, and ended up getting into the red zone. And, of course, Cameron Rising, the quarterback for Utah, throws the interception at the very end of the game into the end zone. And Florida hangs on for a 3-point win. They then turn around the following week and lose to Kentucky by, I think, 10. And then, of course, this past weekend, the game against South Florida. There's a saying, I talked about this relating to something else the other day. A win is a win. A win is not a win in college football. In the NFL, a win is a win. In Major League Baseball, a win is a win. In NBA, a win is a win. In college football, a win is not a win. As long as you have polls and rankings and human beings watching games, and then those human beings judging based off their own opinion where a certain team should be ranked, a win is not a win, right? I mean, we all know that. We watch college football a long time. Sometimes that works out in our favor in terms of whatever team we're rooting for. Sometimes it works against us, right? You blow out a really good team, voters take notice of that and consider ranking you higher. You barely beat a bad team, well, they take notice of that too, right? Again, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. And I know one of the sort of arguments that college football fans like to have about college football is that it is so subjective. People love to complain about polls and rankings and things like that. I mean, the reality is there's 130 teams. You're never going to be able to have an objective way of ranking or classifying teams in a particular order from 1 through 130. Enough of the teams can't play each other for that to happen. This isn't the NFL where you only have 32 teams and it's easy to play down to the final two in a Super Bowl or any other sport. College basketball is the closest thing to what college football has with a selection committee for the NCAA tournament. So a win is not a win. And the 3-point win against Utah is a good win, right? This is a good example of that. Florida's 3-point win against Utah is a good win. Why? Utah was ranked in the top 10. They've since won every other game they've played. They're ranked pretty high. That looks like a good win for Florida. The South Florida win is not the same as the Utah win. That's a bad win because South Florida is a horrible team. Horrible. How horrible are they? Well, they only have one win this year, and that's against a nobody team. They got blown out by BYU 50-21. Their only wins against Howard. And then, of course, they have the loss at the Swamp to Florida, a game they should have won. And you say, well, it's early in the year. They could go end up going 10-2. Yeah, they could, but they ain't. They were 2-10 last year. 2-10. This is not a good team. This is not a good South Florida team. In fact, this is a horrible South Florida team. And Florida had to hang on to get a 3-point home win against them. It's not a good look. Billy Napier then comes out in the post-game press conference and pulls a Butch Jones. Again, I am not saying that 100% for certain Billy Napier is going to fall on his face, Butch Jones style, Lyle style, like what occurred at Tennessee from 2015 to 2018 or whatever it was when he was there. But there are signs pointing in that direction. I talked about a few of them, like I mentioned in the video I made a couple of months ago during the summer, and we got another one here. For those of you who have not seen Billy Napier's post-game South Florida press conference, when he was asked by a reporter, basically the question was, is this a satisfying win? Are you happy with a 3-point win against South Florida? The answer should have been no. We didn't play well. We did this wrong. We did that wrong. We got a lot to improve on. We got to do this. We got to do that. This was an embarrassing performance. I mean, that's what he should have said. That's what Kirby Smart says when we beat people like Samford 33-0. Kirby doesn't come out and brag about beating terrible teams 33-0. Why is Sunbelt Billy out here bragging about beating one of the worst group of 5 teams in the country, South Florida, by 3 at home by a miracle? You have to go back in time to when Butch Jones was at Tennessee. Let's go back to 2015. And I'm going to show you the video of Billy Napier's comments after the South Florida game. And then I'm going to show you some comments that Butch Jones made after a game against South Carolina in 2015. Now, I know that was a long time ago, so let me refresh your memory. In 2015, South Carolina finished with a record of 3-9. The reason most people remember 2015 when it comes to South Carolina, that was Steve Spurrier's last year as head coach, and he quit in the middle of the season. He actually quit about 3 weeks before the South Carolina-Tennessee game. So Tennessee was terrible. They were a 3-win team, like I said, for the course of the season, going 3-9. They lost to the Citadel that year. They were absolutely horrible. Steve Spurrier quit midseason, interim head coach, team gave up, just absolutely awful. Tennessee strolls into a game against that South Carolina team about 3 weeks before the end of the season and beats them 27-24. A 3-point win against one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country. Power 5 teams, generally speaking, are better than Group of 5 teams. I know there were, Cincinnati last year, there's plenty of Power 5 teams that Cincinnati was better than. I get that. I'm talking in general. So Butch Jones, Lyle, takes Tennessee in a game against a terrible South Carolina team, a 3-win South Carolina team, 3-9, where Steve Spurrier had quit 3 weeks earlier. The team was in a tailspin. They were losing to the Citadel. Butch Jones takes Tennessee in there, wins by 3 points in a miracle. So after the game, he's getting asked a bunch of questions similar to what Billy Napier was getting asked after the South Florida game. You're going to see how Butch Jones handled those questions. And then you're going to see how our boy Sunbelt Billy handled those questions. And, here's a spoiler alert. It's almost identical.
I'm thankful to win, and I told the players that. I think this game, I don't think people really understand how much work goes into it, from our players, from our staff. And anytime you win a football game, I think there's a place to celebrate that. We're certainly going to do that tonight.
But, I'm never going to apologize for winning. This is a hard-fought game, and we're playing a good football team, and I give South Carolina all the credit in the world. They're on scholarship. They're going to have success. We're still building. I'm proud of our players. I'm proud of our program, but we need to start being positive around here.
Sunbelt Billy, the next Lyle. If you just read transcripts of those two answers, to those two questions from those two games, Tennessee versus South Carolina in 2015, Florida versus South Florida in 2022, if you just read the transcripts of those questions and those answers to those questions by Butch Jones in 2015 and Billy Napier in 2022, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You wouldn't know who was who. You wouldn't know who was talking about what game, except for the fact that Butch Jones actually mentioned South Carolina by name. It's basically the same answer to the same question. And both answers were wrong. Both answers were handled the wrong way. Both answers are an indication of what goes on inside these coaches' head, that they think a win is a win. A win is not a win. Let me go over some stuff from the Florida-South Florida game. Anthony Richardson, 2 interceptions, crippling interceptions. The one at the beginning of the third quarter nearly could have ended up costing Florida the game. And again, of course, 0 touchdown passes for Anthony Richardson. He doesn't have any touchdown passes all year long. Run defense for Florida doesn't exist. Run defense, absolutely horrendous. They gave up 286 yards rushing to South Florida. To South Florida. Same South Florida that went 2-10 last year. 286 yards rushing. Over 200 of that was in the first half. Run defense, non-existent. I know Florida was missing one of their middle linebackers in this game. And you got 85 Scallies. You got 85 Scallies. There's no excuse for missing one linebacker being the reason that you would give up 286 yards rushing to South Florida. The interior of the Florida defense doesn't exist. It's absolutely horrible. Florida only ran 23 plays in the first half. 23 plays total in the first half. One of those was a knee, where they took a knee at the end of the half. So really, they only ran 22 plays, actual plays, in the first half. 0 point. Listen to this. You want to talk about coaching ability? Listen to this. In 3 games for the Florida Gators, a close win against Utah, a 10-point loss to Kentucky, and a 3-point win against a terrible South Florida team. 3 games in to the Sunbelt Billy era. That's 3 opportunities to take your team into the locker room at halftime, talk them up, coach them up, make adjustments, whatever you need to do to come out and play better in the third quarter. 3 games, 3 opportunities to come out in the third quarter and show what you were able to do at halftime. 3 games, 0 points total in the third quarter for Florida this season. Florida has not scored a single point in the third quarter this season. Not a single point. How can that be defended by Florida fans? It can't. It can't. What is Sunbelt Billy doing at halftime? What is he saying to the players? What is he drawing or scheming up? What are him and the coaches brainstorming about at halftime that you're 3 weeks into the season and you've got a goose egg on the board total for the third quarter, all 3 games combined? Not a single point scored in the third quarter for Florida all year. Back to South Florida, 3 for 8 on third downs. Can't stay on the field. That's how you end up only running 23 plays in the first half, 22 if you count the fact that you took a knee. You're 6 points away from 0-3. Florida actually took three knees. Florida ran 47 plays in this game, or 46 or 47 plays in this game. 3 of them were kneel downs. 3 of them. So really, they only ran about 43 plays total in this game. Sunbelt Billy is looking more and more like the next Butch Jones. And Florida fans are going to talk about the recruiting class. Great. Go back and look at Butch Jones' first recruiting class when he was at Tennessee. You know what you'll find? You'll find him ranked exactly where Florida is ranked right now. Florida Gators, Sunbelt Billy, the next Butch Lyle Jones.